Hi, welcome to another Ask an Atheist. I'm Dan Barker. I'm co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
And I'm Andrew Seidel. I am a constitutional attorney and the director of strategic response here at FFRF.
Today, we're going to be discussing the FFRF's year on Capitol Hill. And we're excited to be Skyping with Mark Dann. Mark is FFRF's Director of Government Affairs and part of the Strategic Response Team here at FFRF. Mark is helping FFRF make its mark in Washington, D.C. That's an old joke, isn't it, Mark? You're probably tired of that. Anyway, we're going to be discussing our year in Washington, our successes and our frustrations, and our hopes for the future.
As always, if you've got questions for Mark or comments for any of us, please post them right here on Facebook, or you can send an email to askanatheist@ffrf.org. Mark, welcome back to Ask an Atheist.
Thank you.
Now, before we start...
Good to be back.
Well, now, before we start grilling you, I want our viewers to know that FFRF members, that's the dues-paying members, they receive regular updates from you about your work on Capitol Hill. And we just posted your end-of-the-year wrap-up on the website for everyone to see. And, I mean, Mark, this has been quite a year so far.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we're here that I'm extremely proud of. And I think when you think about where we were and where we are today, it's really quite wonderful. Plus, we've been able to build on a lot of our earlier success. So not too long ago, we had a really good reputation on the Hill for being out in front on a lot of judicial nominations and also working with members for secular invocation. We've been able to expand that role greatly. And so just whether it's the three members of the Congressional Free Thought Caucus coming on Free Thought Matters, having Mark Dann talk about his values at the FFRF convention, moving forward 3 bills and piling on co-sponsors to an appropriations request, that I just see that we're having a lot of forward momentum that I think we can all be very, very proud of.
Well, let's talk about that. And I think we have a clip of the Mark Dann moment that you're talking about. Bruce, can we roll that clip real quick? And then let's chat about it for a second.
I certainly wasn't elected to decide which form or sect of religion is right and which is wrong. But I do know that everyone has a right to their religious faith. And by our laws, everyone has a right to their lack of religious faith. And if you work for the government, you have an obligation to follow our laws, period, which say there's a separation between church and state. It's really that easy. But it's also very important for the 24% of us in this country who don't follow a specific religion to also have their values recognized. We are strongest when we adhere to the values put forth by our Constitution, and it doesn't make us a religious nation, just the opposite. They said, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. It's in the best interest of this great democracy to respect each and every law-abiding person and respect that we are a nation of laws that starts with the U.S. Constitution and the First Amendment.
So that's U.S. Representative Mark Dann at the FFRF convention, and he said that 24% of us. So, Mark Dann, why was that such a big moment?
That was a big moment for a lot of reasons. One, you have another member of Congress acknowledging, one, that secular values are paramount, that they don't have anything to do, that having a particular religion doesn't make you a good person, it's your values. And I think that was really meaningful from Representative Dann. But the big thing is saying that he is part of non-religious America. And when he identifies himself as one of us, one of the 26% of free thinkers, atheists, agnostics across America who are making a greater part of political life. Plus, now you have Representative Huffman and Representative Dann, who really represents sort of the breadth of free thought in the United States. Representative Huffman would say he doesn't believe in a higher power, and Representative Pocan would say that he doesn't have a particular religious affiliation. But the common bind is having secular values and leading with them.
So Representative Pocan is our representative right here in Madison, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't this a great town to live in with somebody like here representing? And he says his job is to represent. And since more than 50% of this county, Dane County, is non-religious, that's his job. He's supposed to represent us. And by the way, that figure's gone up to 26% since he gave that speech, according to the Pew.
Actually, it was the day before he gave that speech that number came out, and afterwards we chatted with him a little bit about that, and he said, "Oh, you got to tell everybody whenever you show that." So thanks for remembering.
So you've been, so Mark, you've been there. When did you start? Back in March?
June.
In June, okay. So you've been in
longer, and it's been wonderful.
Well, you've been there for what, 5 or 6 months? Is that your spacious DC office there that you?
Yes.
Yeah, is that it?
Well, no. We're based here at a WeWork right in Chinatown, which is really in the heart of Washington, D.C. And it's fantastic because right across the street, I can jump on the metro and get to the Senate side really easily. And then if I walk about 2-3 blocks away, I get on another metro line and I can get to the House side really well. So we're very strategically located. Plus, it's pet friendly, and I get to bring one of my 2 Chihuahuas to work.
Ah.
And is said Chihuahua in the office at this moment?
He is. Would you like to say hi?
Yeah. Let's see Manny, please.
All right, hang tight. Manny, you're on camera. Come on.
Yay.
Get camera ready.
Okay.
Oh, there
So
we
this
go.
is Manny.
How cute.
Hi, Manny.
Yeah.
Say something free thought, Manny. That's cute.
So he is. So he and his sister come to work on a regular basis with me, and they're tons of fun, and they like playing with some of the other dogs in the office.
So I have a complaint, Mark. You've been there for 5 or 6 months, working pretty hard for FFRF, but you were not able to stop the prayer meeting at the White House last Friday that happened with Paula White and all those people with their hands up. Why couldn't you stop that?
Well, unfortunately, we do have a president and an executive branch that is not a pro-secular majority. And we see non-pro-secular majorities in the Senate as well. However, the House is a completely different story. And because of the change of leadership in the House, we've been able to really start moving a lot of our bills forward. So, for example, the Do No Harm Act, which basically says that all public services and accommodations should be just that, public, and there shouldn't be religious exemptions for government-provided services. Well, we've been able to work steadily with a lot of our coalition partners, such as the Human Rights Campaign, Interfaith Alliance, Americans United for Separation of Church and State, and we've been able to boost that co-sponsor number, which is really important, and it shows how many members really support a bill and are likely to vote for it should it come to the floor. So that number on the Do No Harm Act is at 166. And recently, of those 30 or so co-sponsors that have come onto the bill, we have FFRF members have directly engaged with those offices. And I think we can point to a lot of those people coming on as a direct result of our efforts.
So that's pretty impressive. We're getting co-sponsors on a really important bill that actually rolls back the power of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, RFRA. So great work there. Now, what's another tangible victory that you can point to, something that FFRF helped pull off that you and Manny's sister did there in D.C. that we can tell our members about?
Well, I think if you look back as a whole, you're able to see that FFRF members are getting a lot of value for their membership fees, or for their membership dues. And one good example of this is the No Ban Act. And what the No Ban Act does is that it says that it rolls back Trump's Muslim ban, and it says that religion or non-religion can't be used as a test for immigration.
And this is, pause for 1 sec, because this is really important, because a lot of people I don't think realize that if Trump can do this to people from Muslim-majority countries on the basis of their religion, then he can do it to all the atheists that are fleeing oppression in places like Bangladesh as well. I mean, this is something that is critical to the secular community worldwide. So this is the reason that FFRF is trying to throw its weight behind this. So what have you been doing with the No Ban Act?
So we were able to get a letter of support from our friends at the Congressional Free Thought Caucus, and that's the caucus that upholds separation of church and state and promotes equal rights of free thinkers in America as well. And so we were able to get a support letter on the bill to express support from the caucus members. We were able to work on submitting testimony. But the real value for a lot of FFRF members is that we were also able to submit an amicus brief for a lot of parallel court findings. And this showed people on the Hill that we can fight on multiple fronts, we can do multiple work, and we can really engage the full breadth of the federal government as well. So whether it's Congress, the executive branch, or the judiciary, we'll be there.
Now, you mentioned Representative Huffman, and you and I were chatting at the convention, and you mentioned in your convention talk, your update, that Representative Huffman was kind of responsible for one of your favorite moments from your first year at FFRF. Do you want to remind everybody about that?
There's been so many. So in terms of with Representative Huffman,
I'm thinking of the interview, the Free Thought Matters interview that we showed.
Right. He was able to show essentially what he's up against in Congress, and he was able to show that with remarkable candor that unfortunately some of his colleagues don't live in a world where fact, reason, and accountability exist. And so sometimes, and he was able to shed a light on that and be able to be a very strong and vocal supporter for making sure that our secular values do come through.
Yeah. I think we have a clip for that. Bruce, do you have that clip by any chance?
The interview that was set up?
Okay.
There's, I believe, too much religion in politics. There's also too much politics in religion. And I think the two, each of them is stronger when they're kept separate. So, the idea that, some are pushing, Ted Cruz and others, that we simply go ahead and let people openly campaign and engage in politics from the pulpit, that's troubling. But the way people are dragging their religion into Congress, into our public policy is just as troubling. We really need to defend this bright line of separation between the two.
That's Representative Jared Huffman, the 2nd Congressional District, which is from the Golden Gate Bridge all the way up to Oregon. I was just there a couple months ago. They were having all the forest fires and all that, but it's a great wine country as well. So, Mark, you've also been working with the Congressional Free Thought Caucus that Jared Huffman started, and Huffman and Raskin and some others started. And I remember there were like 8 members at the time. Has it grown since that time?
Yes, it has grown. So 2 recent members are Representative Caston and Representative Susan Wild. Representative Caston is from just the outskirts of Chicago, and Representative Wild is from Pennsylvania. They're really significant because they're in Republican-leaning districts. So this presents an enormous opportunity for Free Thought Caucus members to talk to more conservative folks about why secularism matters, why separation of church and state matters, and why the Free Thought community matters to them as well. And I think having folks from a variety of districts shows that free thinkers are everywhere. They deserve representation. And I'm glad that a lot of the new freshmen are coming on board. There's probably going to be another one. I'm having a meeting with that office on Monday, and so you should see a lucky number 13 very soon.
So you've been drawing a lot of attention to the Congressional Free Thought Caucus, working to build its numbers, but you've also been building our coalitions, FFRF's coalitions, with other secular groups and other interest groups and other nonprofits out there to help us get things done. Can you tell us a little bit about what some of that work entails?
Absolutely. So I think looking at this, we've always had really good relationships, and we're so grateful for so many of our secular partners, whether it's American Atheists, Center for Inquiry, Secular Coalition for America, and American Humanist Association, who all have representation here in Washington. And we work together and coordinate together as a movement to advance our legislative agenda. I'm also really thrilled that on a lot of our key bills that we've been able to expand our coalition supporters. So for example, on the Scientific Integrity Act, we've been able to coordinate our efforts with the Union for Concerned Scientists as well to help advance that bill, which essentially the Scientific Integrity Act takes out political meddling for publicly funded scientific research.
Because it's not just atheists and agnostics who care about these issues. There's a broad cross-section of Americans who we can join with on lobbying about many of these things.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna ask one more question before we have a bunch of audience questions that are coming in. One thing I'd like to know is, what is it that viewers, people who are watching this right now or watching this on YouTube, can do to help you be more effective on Capitol Hill? Well, if you could give them one piece of advice, one thing that they have to do, a task, what would it be?
Become a member of FFRF. And
good answer.
This is really critical because we have about 30,000 members, and I'm so grateful for everyone who contributes a little bit of cash to help fund a lot of our work, and it means the world. But if people could think about, if we could steadily increase that number, what could we look like? And then think one of our coalition partners, the Human Rights Campaign, is a really good example, and we're working with the Human Rights Campaign on the Do No Harm Act. One thing they can do is say, okay, well, certain bills are going to be scorecard votes or scorecard bills. So they can say to members that this is a priority piece of legislation. If you are a co-sponsor or a sponsor or you vote for the bill, your score goes up. If you are not on the bill, your score goes down. And when they release those priority bills, guess what? A lot of members pay a lot of attention. And that effect, that power, comes through a lot of hard work, comes through a lot of dedication, and it comes from a very wide membership base. And I hope one day we can emulate all the good work that they're doing.
You know, and I mean, it's kind of like when we write a letter, a legal letter, and I say, look, we represent 30 people in your school district, or 300 people in your state, or 3,000 or 30,000, it gives us that much more weight and heft and influence when we have that kind of membership. It really is important. And when we're talking about things like building the Congressional Free Thought Caucus or whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish, having that membership behind us, it's not just the money that helps us, it's adding your voice to ours that makes that difference.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got a bunch of questions here.
Didn't we have a clip from Raskin to show?
We did.
But we don't want to show it?
Mark didn't give us a setup, so do you want to just show a bald clip? I was going to try to work it into the questions.
Well, I guess you're hosting today, so you can...
Well, Oliver Bennett is asking an interesting question, and I know we talked about this. Mark, this was in your write-up. He's saying, is the Johnson Amendment actually enforceable? If so, what are the penalties for violating it? I know several churches in my hometown where the pastors constantly tell people who to vote for. They're mostly pro-life, anti-LGBTQ candidates. So
it has to do with the IRS then. Someone has to make a complaint. If you see a violation like that, the only thing, correct me if I'm wrong, the only thing we can do is complain to the IRS that this nonprofit is breaking the law, and then hope and not pray that the IRS will then do something, take some kind of action, up to maybe even taking away their tax exemption. Yeah, I mean, that's typically the penalty. You can lose your tax exemption. You can lose your tax exemption for a certain period of time, for a year or 2 years. It has happened. It has happened to churches in the United States. It's rare, but it's important that the rule is in place. I mean, it's kind of like a speed limit. Like, people go the speed limit knowing that it is posted, even if there's not a cop there with a speed trap actually trying to enforce that rule. So having the law in force is important. And Trump and Pence have said several times that they have destroyed the Johnson Amendment, that they've stopped enforcing it. That's not true. FFRF sued the very day that Trump passed that executive order that supposedly did this, and his Justice Department admitted in court twice, that the law was still in full effect and still enforced, that they hadn't changed anything. So what should one of our members do or viewers do if they see a church violating the law? The easiest thing to do is actually to write to FFRF. We have a pipeline directly to the IRS where we report these things and we can keep track of it. The problem with knowing what happens is that all IRS enforcement of these complaints is confidential.
So we don't know, unless it ends up being written in a court opinion, which is really, really rare, what is happening in terms of enforcement. So the IRS could go out and say, okay, the church, you have to stop doing this, and if you don't, you're going to lose your tax-exempt status. But we would never know about it. They wouldn't actually tell us.
Do they even tell you that they got your complaint? Do they even respond to that?
They do. They will say, we've received your complaint, and then they say, it's all confidential, what happens next. So yeah. No way to work Jamie Raskin into that one. We'll have to see. Alfie Hodge asks, why are you all focusing on the Muslim ban? That's not even a separation of state and church issue, and it's not even a Muslim ban at all. Well, Alfie, I'm sad to say that your final point is incorrect. It is actually a ban based on religion. They amended it several times to make it a little more palatable as the court challenges progressed 4 different times, as a matter of fact. But the reason we're focusing on it is what we mentioned, that if the government can discriminate against people coming into this country because of their religion, they can also do it because of their lack of religion. And whatever study you look at, atheists and Muslims are tied at the bottom for the least popular in this country. And there are many, many atheists under threat around the world that need to get to safe places. And we have a pipeline where we try to ensure that. We've helped rescue a number of people, atheists in Bangladesh and Pakistan, and we're trying to continue that work. And we don't want this administration, which is so Christian nationalist, to turn around and say, nope, you can't come in.
Did Mark want to say something?
No, I don't know.
I agree wholeheartely with that, and I think that it really speaks to the idea of a country that is welcoming to people of a variety of religious faiths and backgrounds, including none, and the No Band Act seeks to uphold those very, very key values.
I mean, I like to quote Martin Luther King on this too, which is a threat to justice. An injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think that actually would play nicely into the Raskin clip. So, Bruce, if you would like to roll that, go ahead and roll that now, and then we'll chat about it for a minute afterwards.
The way that you make the world safe for religious differences and for religious pluralism is to separate church and state and have the role of the government be just to protect people's practice of their own religion against other people's efforts to tyrannize them. And that has been a success story for America. There are people who come to our country who would be killing each other where they came from, but they come to America and everybody can practice as they please without the state being involved. But our founders rebelled against centuries of religious warfare and violence, the wars between the Catholics and the Protestants that took place throughout Europe. They rebelled against Inquisition, crusades, witchcraft trials, and so on.
I mean, that's Jamie Raskin on Free Thought Matters. You can see the full interview on our YouTube channel. You can see the full Representative Huffman interview on there. You can see Representative Pocan's convention speech. All of that is due to Mark's work on Capitol Hill and the relationships he's been building. But I love Jamie Raskin's point there. He's saying that there is no such thing as the freedom of religion without a government that is free from religion. So important. And
he's the representative from Maryland.
Correct.
Right? And he's one of the co-founders of the Free Thought Caucus in Congress. Right?
That's correct.
Right.
And Mark has been working with his office quite a bit on a number of issues.
Yeah, they've been extremely helpful on a variety of issues, especially, and I think one of the key elements is that Representative Raskin is a very key figure in Congress these days. He's in leadership. He was elected to represent members who have been in the House for only a few terms. So he meets regularly with Leader Pelosi on issues of concern. You probably have seen him on Judiciary and also on House Government Oversight and Reform, where he chairs the Constitution and Civil Rights Committee. So in terms of holding the Trump administration accountable, it is very important that we have a lot of members who are on key committees and can assert the power of Congress.
And he, like me, is a huge constitutional law nerd. Unlike me, he's a constitutional law professor, too. But I love chatting with him about con law. So we have a couple questions that are not really related to your work, but we're going to answer them anyway, and then we're going to come back to you for a last question. So Angie Garth asks, I saw one of your solstice displays in Eugene, Oregon. Awesome job. Have your displays ever been vandalized? And where can I buy one?
They have been vandalized in the past, which really backfires because when one of our signs or billboards is vandalized, there's more media coverage of the sign. So a lot more people see it on the evening news because it was vandalized. Somebody threw acid at our Wisconsin sign about 10 years ago, and it was totally messed up. So we made a new one. Got more attention.
We've had signs stolen.
And so I think it was some junior high kids. They threw some water balloons with paint up at one of our beer bowls, just splattered it, which kind of made it look kind of cool. And then the evening news display, there's been vandalism. So yeah, there has been. Some have been slashed.
Pittman, yeah, it was slashed. And then in Pittman, New Jersey, somebody tried to burn down one of our holiday billboards. I don't know if you remember that one.
And our big sign in Illinois about 15 years ago was burned. And then it was defaced by a guy dressed up like Santa Claus with a long pole with paint on it, and he was arrested. There was a picture in the evening news. Santa was arrested for defacing our sign. So it does happen.
And Sam Grover, one of our attorneys here at FFRF, came up with the idea of a resurrection fund a couple years back. So now people can pledge to the resurrection fund, and they say, if this display is vandalized, I promise to donate, X number of dollars to make sure that it comes back. And that was a very successful campaign. And actually, since we started that, we haven't had anything vandalized, I believe.
Well, the majority of them are not. The majority of them are respectfully in place. We went down to Chicago this last weekend and saw two of them sitting out in the Arlington Hills or the Arlington big park there. And it was next to a nativity scene and a menorah and a bunch of other Santa Claus and choo-choo trains. And everybody was coming by reading it. It was like a part of the holidays.
Now, we don't sell them. We do have a ton of great free thought and atheist swag in the FFRF store online, including Dan's books and a lot of other really fun items that are perfect.
You have a book, don't you, Andrew?
I do have a book.
You do have a book,
I do have a book. And we sign those books. If you order them through FFRF and leave a little note, we'll sign them, which makes a really great Festivus gift. So you may want to check that store out.
But what if she or he wants a display for their town?
Excellent question. So we erect these displays when the government refuses to take down religious displays, when there's what we call legally it's an open forum for displays, meaning that anybody can put up anything. That's when we are willing to put up an FFRF display. And if you have one of those in your town, all you have to do is contact FFRF through our web form on the website. There's a legal tab and you just report a state church violation, reach out to us and we will help you get that up and we'll take care of paying for it, so you don't actually have to buy it. So that's the way you get one in your hometown if you want it. Beth asks via email, is it legal for our public county library to allow the Jehovah's Witnesses to sit directly in front of the main door to the library with a display of their literature? So this is actually one of the more common complaints that we get at FFRF is Jehovah's Witnesses who are out in public or on government property proselytizing. And the Jehovah's Witnesses tend to be pretty good about following at least the letter of the law, even if not the spirit of the law. So typically they are in what is considered a traditional public forum, meaning that they're on a public sidewalk or someplace like that where it is accepted that you will encounter other forms of speech. So courts have allowed them to speak. If they're there, that means that you can be there, though, too. But we see them all over the place. They're popular at DMVs, a couple national parks from time to time. National parks often have an area set aside for free speech activities, and Jehovah's Witnesses take advantage of that. But if they're there, you can be there.
Annie Laurie saw some Jehovah's Witnesses at the airport last year, and she went right up to them. Do you have a permit? Why are you here? And they showed her a permit. Yep. So they went through and they did it right. So
they're usually pretty good about it.
Yeah.
But so again, if they're there, you can be there.
You can ask them, though. You can go up and ask.
Absolutely.
Do you have a right to be here?
And so we have one more, and then we're going to get back. I'm going to ask my final question.
Are we going to show your socks? Do we have a chance?
My War on Christmas socks?
Your War on Christmas socks?
Let's do this one first. So Rebecca asks, my 8-year-old boy came home and said he got in trouble for saying that he didn't believe in God. This appears to be in a public school. He said that the teacher called him to her desk and asked him about it, I guess it being God. He said she was louder than normal and that the whole class heard his answer. What can I do? Okay, so that, Rebecca, that's a terrible situation. I'm very sorry that you are going through that. Please go to the FFRF website, go to the legal tab, and click Report a State Church Violation. We've worked on issues like this before. One of the cases that I most remember here at FFRF involves facts that are very, very similar. We can absolutely help you with this. But the first thing to do is to reach out to us through that website, through that web form with all the information that you have got, and we will do what we can to help you. And again, I'm sorry you're going through this.
Because it is a violation. That teacher is breaking the law.
Absolutely. There's no reason to be asking an 8-year-old their religious beliefs.
And especially in a school situation where they can be bullied or ostracized by their peers. They're made to set out like they're like they're different.
Yep, it's something that we see with unfortunate regularity.
Yeah, our public schools are supposed to treat everybody equally.
So please, Rebecca, reach out to our legal team. We will be able to help you with this.
So Mark, we saw your Chihuahua, but do you want to see how Andrew is fighting the war on Christmas?
I'm going to show a little leg here since Dan's
Absolutely.
asking.
He's got his war on Christmas socks.
These are my war on Christmas socks.
What is that?
Yeah, you can see it's Santa crossbones. Christina made a lovely joke. It's the true Jolly Roger here. You got the snowflakes and. Anyway, speaking of Christmas, so this is our last question, Mark. Your year in review on the website up there said that Scrooged is the greatest holiday classic of all time. So my question is this: how can you be so wrong? I mean, it is a scientifically proven fact that Die Hard and Love Actually are tied for the top 2 holiday classics, followed closely by National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. So I will ask this again, sir: how can you be so wrong?
Well, I think good people of varying ideas can certainly agree to disagree on a few things. Die Hard might give you. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation might give you. Love Actually, we're going to have a long chat about this. I mean, where shall I begin on this one? How shall we talk about the wasted talent of Emma Thompson and Alan Rickman and Liam Neeson? How shall we talk about it that it's just this glossing over? All you have to do for anyone who's been in a relationship for longer than 20 minutes is say, I love you. And it goes on and on for another 2 hours.
All right, fair enough. We will debate this when you come to Madison next week.
But what's so great about Scrooged?
Bill Murray, probably.
Oh, Bill Murray.
One, you have to admit that in terms of how, first of all, in terms about Scrooge and the Christmas Carol, is that it doesn't have really much to do about Christmas. But what it does have to do, I think, is with a very human condition of how do people look at the past that they might not be proud of, and how can you create a future you can be proud of. And also there is sort of that sense that if people don't live with good values, without reason, without accountability, without compassion, there will be some sort of reconciliation as well. And Scrooge does it in probably the funniest way possible. I mean, Carol Kane does throw a toaster, so that's pretty good.
Huh.
I think our viewers are going to end up agreeing with you after that little debate.
Huh. Well, thanks for all you do, Mark. There in Washington D.C. It's a big order you have, but it looks like your first year is off and running.
It's been a lot of fun this year, and in terms of highlights, there's just been so many. And I hope that 2020 brings good things. But I think that one of my favorite things about being here with FRF was probably our convention, getting to meet so many of our supporters. One of my favorite moments was just watching, I mean this sincerely, just in the chaos and bustle, you're just kind of playing the piano at lunch and overlooking the lake in Madison. And it was just really this great, peaceful, quiet moment in the midst of all this chaos. And I hope sometimes I think about that as we go into next year, which is going to be pretty eventful.
It's going to be chaotic.
It's in San Antonio next November.
Absolutely.
So our members can meet you there in person if they show up.
Yep, that's our next convention
Yes,
in 2020 in San
everyone.
Antonio.
Say hello.
I think it's November 13th through 15th, so Friday the 13th.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, that's our show for this week. You had nothing else to say there, Mark? Thank you. And we want to thank you viewers for watching and invite you to tune in next week, Wednesday at noon Central, for another episode of FFRF's Ask an Atheist.